All right, good morning everyone and welcome back to Teal House Farm. Today we are going to be putting together some chicken and vegetable soup, which is technically chicken and vegetable noodle soup because that's how we always eat it, but I don't can with noodles in the jar because it's not recommended as safe for several reasons. I really don't see any reason to break the rules on this when it takes 2 seconds to add noodles to something when you're warming it up. And plus this gives more room in the jar for more vegetables, right? Anyway, it's really simple. I'm going to show you how we do it. This is a really easy one to do because it actually makes itself in the jar. So we don't need to put it together in a big pot on the stove. We're actually going to put all of our ingredients in the jar and top off with some broth and can it that way. So this is a pressure canning recipe because it does have meat and low acid foods in it, and because it does have meat in it, this is going to be a 90-minute canning time. But it's a very simple recipe. Now for just a moment to talk about safety, I'm not following a specific USDA recommended recipe for this, but I am taking all of the rules and guidelines and keeping them in mind. So a couple of things we're going to look for is that at least 50% of our jar is going to be liquid, and we're only going to can things that are recommended for canning. So we're not going to be throwing any, broccoli or other things that don't have canning recommendations as far as cutting, size, and how to prepare them for canning. We're going to be using all canning safe foods and following correct proportions, and this will keep it safe for us. So I feel very comfortable using this recipe. Again, if you only feel comfortable using USDA approved recipes, I am sure they have a chicken soup one somewhere that you can look up, but I feel very comfortable with this. Anyway, let me show you what we need, and I'll show you some variations that you can throw in as well because there are some more options as far as vegetables go. But this is going to make a lot, and it's pretty simple. Here is everything that we're going to use today. So I have a big 2-pound bag of carrots. We're not going to use this whole bag. We'll probably use somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 of it. I have this 1 pack of marked down chicken that I got at the store. We will probably use all of this. This is quite a lot of chicken though, so we'll kind of see how it evens out in the jar. But this is 4 pounds of chicken, just for reference. I have this bag of marked down green beans. We will use all of these. This is a 2-pound bag. Then I have 2 yellow onions. I have a couple random potatoes, and these potatoes I picked specifically. I don't always put potatoes in my vegetable soup, chicken vegetable soup, but the baby got into the pantry the other day and she took bites, little nibbles out of 3 different potatoes. So I'm gonna cut out the part she nibbled on and then use up those potatoes because now they've been damaged, so they won't last in the pantry really long. And then I have a bag of frozen peas. I'm going to pour these in a bowl so they can defrost a little bit. I don't like recanning canned peas because they get super mushy, and I just can't find fresh peas at the store really ever. I don't know if anybody ever finds them. Maybe if you have a fancier or a really big grocery store you do, but just not an option where we live. So unless I'm growing them, which I'm not doing in winter, frozen peas it is. Some other things that are easy to add would be, the main one is celery. People, that's very common in chicken vegetable noodle soup, but I just don't have any on hand, so we're going to make it without it. Anyway, we need to go ahead and do a lot of dicing. We're going to make sure the potatoes, after we dice them, that we put them in a bowl of water just to help get rid of some of that starch, and then we'll be ready to start loading jars. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm going to cheat today, and I'm going to fill the jars with boiling water and add a teaspoon of bouillon powder in each jar. You could also make fresh chicken broth if you want to, and then top your jars with your homemade chicken broth, but I don't have any chicken bones in the freezer right now to make broth with, so we're going to cheat and use this, but you can do either.
First thing, we need to just get all the vegetables separated into bowls. This will make loading the jars a lot easier. I don't have very many potatoes. You obviously could add more. I was just using those up. We're going to snap the beans. I try to do it with a knife first, much faster to do it with my hands. Put those into a bowl. We're going to need to peel and dice some carrots. I used 2 onions as well. And we got everything all separated. Now the jars I washed in hot soapy water, and normally you need to keep them warm, so you can do that either in a big pot of water. You could do that by running them in your dishwasher. I just put them in the oven with the oven off, and that helped to retain the heat. Everything's ready to go. We've got the clean warm jars ready to be loaded. I'm gonna have the little kids help me because they really were wanting to get involved with this one. They thought it looked fun. And so everybody gets a bowl of vegetables, and my rule was just put a handful in. We're gonna go all the way around, and then we'll come back around again and add any extras we have. That way our jars are all somewhat uniform as far as the types of vegetables in each jar. They did a really good job. Nobody wanted to do the onions though. I did have to do the onions. Now the chicken is gonna be the last part that we add. We needed to take our raw chicken breasts and we cut them up into 1-inch cubes. My oldest daughter helped me with that one. I didn't really want to have the little guys messing with the raw meat and then touching their clothes and the table and everything all around the house. So I had her help me with that. And we actually only ended up using 2 of the chicken breasts. So again, that was a 4-pound pack. It had 3 really big chicken breasts in it. And I saved one for dinner that night, and then I just used 2 in the soup, and that was plenty. So after we diced them up, she went ahead around for me and she put 4 in each jar. There were just a few left over, so a few jars got 5. And I know that doesn't seem like very much, but when you eat chicken and vegetable soup, even stuff that you make at home or what you buy from the store, it's really very heavy on the vegetables, not the chicken. And so this really works out well, and it really helps keep the total cost per jar down. We did 14 quart jars in all. We're topping off our jars with a teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder, and then we're gonna go ahead and add our boiling water on top of all this. We have the jars about 50% full with vegetables that we were aiming for, and we did a pretty good job meeting that. Here comes the boiling hot water. Now, if you wanted to use fresh broth, you just would skip the step where I added the bouillon powder, and you would just top them off with hot boiling broth. Today, water was just the best choice. I didn't really have enough scraps to make new chicken broth, and I didn't want to open a whole bunch of cans just to dump them in new jars, so this really was the best solution as far as time goes. We're going to need 1-inch headspace on these jars, and before we go ahead and seal them off, we do need to debubble them. What that means is that I'm going to go ahead and take a plastic knife and run it around the inside of the jar. I actually didn't have a knife. I had to find a plastic fork, but it goes ahead and jiggles all those vegetables, make sure there's no air trapped in there. And then we can top off the jars. We need a little bit more water. I wiped the rims to make sure there wasn't any residue on them. And then we're going to put our lids on. Our lids are clean, and they were in a bowl of hot water to help soften the seals. We add the rings to fingertip tightness, and then we put them in our pressure canner. I'm doing 14 quarts today, so that's going to take 2 pressure canners. So we have them loaded. We need to get a nice steam chimney out of both canners before we lock them down. We're going to do 11 pounds pressure for 90 minutes for these quarts. If you do pints, it would be 11 pounds pressure for 75. And we're all done. Now you'll notice that it's floating and some of the vegetables are starting to sink. Over the next 24 hours, they'll all sink to the bottom and the broth will be on top. As always, you want to label and date your jars so you remember. After 24 hours, we will remove the rings and these will be ready to be stored. So super easy recipe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.